of the 3 legislators who will be with us this morning have arrived. And good morning and Happy New Year. I hope the first 29 days of January have treated you very nicely so far. It is with great pleasure to have our wonderful legislators here. Let me introduce 2 people who probably don't need an introduction. State Representative Paul Davis and Senator Gayle Slossberg, both of whom represent Orange, Milford, and West Haven. We are, Senator Themis Klarides should be with us shortly. She is en route, but because of time constraints, we do want to get underway. So let our reps speak first. I think it would be better. They will come up to the mic so we make sure everybody can hear, and then there will be plenty of time for questions. So thank you and welcome again.
Can I just take this out at all or not? Is it stuck? Is this stuck in here or not? See, I'm short, so I can't even see over the podium. So I'm going to stand over here. Everybody says, please stand up. I'm standing and I have my high heels on too already. So I'm Senator Slossberg, and I'm delighted to be here this morning with Paul and Themis, who will be here shortly to speak to you. And I just wanted to first of all just say thank you for all of you for coming out today to not only learn a little bit more about what we've done recently with regard to seniors issues, but also to share with us what you need. Because as you know, we are starting back in session next week. And so it is our great pleasure to try to put forth legislation that's going to help you and try to make sure that things are better for you every day. For me, just what I wanted to share with you before we really get into the nuts and bolts of things is that I have, both of my parents are in their 80s. My mother will kill me if I tell you how old she is actually. But they're both in their 80s and they live in Hamden. And so one of the things that while I am reviewing legislation and looking at what proposals are and thinking about proposals and sometimes, coming up with my own ideas, a lot of the times I think to myself, how will this affect my mom and my dad? What's going to happen? If we were to pass this, what would this do to them? Would this help them? Or would this make things more difficult for them? And, sometimes we pass programs, we say, this is going to help someone, and I think to myself, but I know my mother's not comfortable on the computer. So if this is only computer-based, it's not going to help her. Or I know that my father has trouble walking. So if he has to actually get himself someplace, that's going to be difficult. And so I often think to myself, how's this going to affect my mom and dad? And I think that helps me a lot, because really at the end of the day, when we adjourn our session, I want to be able to say that we have given you what you deserve. You are the foundation of all of the things, all of the wonderful things that we have in our society now comes from you. And we owe you just that little bit that you asked for. It's not a lot. I mean, your generation is very different from my kids who want everything and they want it yesterday. And and there are no boundaries. Your generation asked for very little, just some respect, the dignity to be able to make ends meet and live and enjoy your life and keep up the pace that you are so able to keep up, and that that the government helps and then generally stays out of your way, so that we can just make sure that you have that respect and dignity that you have earned and you deserve. And so that's my pleasure, and I thank you for the privilege of representing you at the state legislature and the state senate. So some of the things that we have worked on, Paul put together some really great, if you've got some of the papers there, really summarize a lot of the items there in terms of some of the things that we have done. So I would suggest you probably take a look at them. I know for me, some of the things that really made a big difference in terms of legislation that we passed last session to try to help our seniors one of the first things was the new home care option program for our elderly, which the idea here is to say, as you get older, we've got a new old. Old isn't what it used to be. And old is now, aging in your home, staying in the community, and here's Themis. Welcome, Themis. Staying in the community and being able to access the services that you need as you need them, as opposed to the way it used to be, which was you get to a certain point and you have to find institutional care, which nowadays, people are living longer and doing better, and we want to be able to help you stay in your homes as long as possible. So this option is a way to help you access the care that you may need that is not otherwise covered by a long-term insurance policy, and you will be able to, it will help you to plan and save so that there is money there to help you stay in your homes for as long as you want to be there. One of the other things that was very important was we increased oversight for assisted living facilities. So I don't think that's really much of, I think you're all very independent. But as the time comes and people start moving more towards assisted living facilities, we want to make sure that people are as safe and as comfortable and cared for as they possibly can be. One of my favorite things, and then I'm going to let Paul talk because I don't want to monopolize the whole thing, but one of the things for me that was very important was this automobile insurance discount for senior drivers. How many of you are driving? Make sure you look at the pamphlet that says, that talks about the discount, because you are eligible for a 5% discount on your car insurance premiums if you take the driver safety course. It's, the specifics are in there, but it's a nice way to save a little bit of money. And if you're willing to go to the course, you can save some money. And I know we shouldn't pass up any opportunities to put a few pennies in our pockets. My mother always said, if you watch your pennies, you don't have to watch your dollars. So I'm delighted to be here, and you know what? I'm gonna give the microphone over to Paul and to Themis, let everybody get a chance, and then we can all answer some questions and have a more informal discussion. So thank you.
Thank you, Gayle. It's a pleasure to be here again with all of you this morning. Of course, I know many of you, and as an Orange resident for the last 30 years, I'm coming from a little different place than Gayle is. She's talking about her parents, and actually I am, personally, I'm dealing with my mother, who is 95, and just moving from a assisted living to a nursing home type situation. So going through all the difficult changes that are happening with her. And of course, looking at things as a person who is retired, and my wife is still working, but coming up upon retirement. We're talking about all the challenges that we face trying to stay in our home, make sure we have enough income, as well as having grandchildren. And fortunately for me, my daughter living in Orange, and the difficulties that the young people are facing in today's society, and particularly in our community. So when we talk about legislation, when we talk about the difficulties that we're facing, we're not only talking about issues that affect all of us as seniors, but issues that are affecting the entire community, our tax problems that we have. And Gayle and Themis and I, of course, represent all different communities in the area. Milford, West Haven, and the issues are very similar from community to community. We talk to residents of other areas, and the same questions come up all the time. Is that it's so difficult to stay in our homes, the taxes are going up, the energy costs are going up, fuel prices, oil, we need some help. And the challenges are also very great because we're trying to provide services for our citizens, which cost money, and increase those services, and at the same time provide relief from the increased charges that everyone is exposed to because of the rising price of energy. So it's a difficult challenge. We're going to work on some issues. We're going to talk about some of the things that are important to you. We're going to save a few questions. I'll let Themis come up here and introduce herself, and then we'll get started on specific issues that are of concern to all of you.
Well, I want to thank all of you guys for having us here and thinking about us, because we certainly think about you all the time. I always like to say that we fight about, as Republicans or Democrats, and sometimes Republicans fight with Republicans, Democrats fight with Democrats on lots of issues, but, basically on seniors issues, veterans issues, and most kids issues, we're all really on the same page. I mean, the three of us get along very well anyway, so we're very lucky. Trust me, that doesn't happen in a lot of delegations throughout the state. When I first got elected, I was very fortunate. I've always had a good group of people in all the towns I represent, my colleagues, but it's really not like that. So we're lucky that we get along, and you guys are lucky that we get along. It's true. But when I walked in, Gayle was talking about the home care option program for the elderly, and to me, that epitomizes what we really believe you guys should have, because it's really about independence. It's about independence, and you get independence by having more choices and more options. And the more control you have over your lives, the richer your life is. You feel like you're really, as we get older, there are certain things, like when we're little, there's certain things we can't control. As we get older, there's certain things we can't control. But the more, nobody wants to be taken care of if you don't have to be. Let's face it, even when in my age, when I need help from somebody, I don't really love asking for help. I do it, but, we all like to think we can take care of everything on our own, at whatever age you are. And when you get to a point where you can't necessarily do that, that's one thing, but we need to give you more options. This home care option is a great program because it allows you to have more control over what you're doing. It allows you to have accounts that you can put money in, so you can decide where your money goes. A lot of the in-home care, which has been a huge issue to us, allowing you to stay in your home. Even when we're sick now, you want to stay. You have a cold, you want to stay home. You don't want to. Who wants to be in a hospital? Who wants to be out of their home? Your things are in your home. That's where you feel comfortable, and that's where you can function at the highest level. So to us, it's really about giving you as many options as possible and allowing you as much control of your life for as long as possible. Thanks. Okay, we'll take questions now. And we're going to answer them as a tag team as usual, so just so you know.
I wrote a letter to the cable company. I told them they shouldn't be going up on the prices because we're in such terrible programs, and a lot of the programs are repeat. So I said, what can we do about it? And they said, speak to your legislators. You are one of the few areas around you that do not have a senior citizen discount on your cable vision.
I see Gayle wants to answer this question.
Yeah, I just, in terms of a senior citizen discount, I think that's something that we'll have to do some more research on, but what I can tell you is that your cable bills, in terms of the prices and what channels they allow and things like that, when they say speak to your legislators, they mean your federal legislators, because that is regulated by the federal government. We at the state level deal with things for your cable access, dealing more with cable access, your government channel, your public access channel, your education channel, our Ogat, which is right here. We regulate some of that, but in terms of your prices and the channels that you have, that comes from the federal government, because we've had the same, I have the same frustration you do. Our cable bills go up constantly, and yet we lose channels.
Well, then why can the surrounding towns have the discount?
Well, you know what, that's something that I want to find out about, because no one has, at least to my knowledge, I don't know if Paul or Themis, have a different answer, but that's not a question that's been raised to me before, and I will find out about that. Carol, do you have an answer for that?
What I can tell you is from my own experience. I have Comcast in New Haven, and there is a senior discount if you are a ConPace or a ConMap recipient. Now, of course, that doesn't take care of everyone, but just to give you a little experiential anecdote to the question. So there is a senior discount, but you have to be on a state program in order to receive it. But it does raise, I think, even a more universal question about, certainly if you can't do anything about the rates, you can't, but what about, I don't know if this is in your bailiwick, but even allowing more companies to come in so there's more competition. I mean, Comcast New Haven, it just has us right by the scruffs of our neck. And I don't know who the carrier is here. Cablevision. You're probably all in the same boat. So there's not a lot of competition in offering cable services.
Right, that's been a big problem going on.
I just wanted to ask Carol, when you said your Comcast server allows, has a senior discount if you fall into certain
Income guidelines.
But do you know if the other towns are similar to that, or they're just senior discounts?
I didn't get the man's name when he called me. He was answering my letter by phone. And all he said is you're one of the few towns that surround you that do not get the discount.
You know, I think that's something we probably have to look into, because the bottom line is we've got Cablevision and we've got Comcast. So if Comcast provides it, you know, it may very well be that Cablevision provides it as well, but what Carol is saying is that you have to be eligible by income guidelines. So that would be the concern, but I can tell you this, we will look into it and we will get back to Carol and let her know what is available from Cablevision, and we'll call them directly and just ask them, how is it that, you know, that Comcast is doing this and that you're not. It may very well be that they have that. It's just, for me, it's never come up before in terms of a question, so it's worth looking up.
Then I had a question about oil. I questioned that, and it seems you've got to spend down till your only assets outside of your house are $10,000 before you can get any help with oil.
Yeah, I mean, what you're talking about is to be able to get onto Title 19 or have a Medicaid.
Just for the oil help, they have a...
It's a low-income energy assistance. It's low-income heating, energy, and assistance plan, LIHEAP. It's and there are income guidelines that are that are set in order for you to be eligible for them. So
the oil takes half of my Social Security for half a tank.
Yeah, no, it's a huge problem. I mean, oil obviously is up over $100 a barrel. So we are all struggling with that in the state. I mean, everybody in the state, our municipalities, our state government, everybody is struggling with the cost of oil. And until we are able as a state to look into other areas, to deal with conservation, to diversify our energy portfolio so that we're getting energy from other sources, we are going to continue really to be, hogtied by the oil companies, which we continue to be, our oil is struggling with. However, there are a number of programs that are available to you for energy assistance and for oil assistance. So to the extent, what I'd like to do is really is to get your name and your information so that we can give you all of the numbers and the various other programs, because there may be something else available that you would be eligible for in addition to the program that you're mentioning.
Gayle, if I may interject, Dennis Marsh, who is our outreach worker, has all of that information. And all you need to do is call Dennis at our main number. And for those of you who get the newsletter, just call our general number. But Dennis will assist older citizens as well as citizens with disabilities with getting on the state fuel assistance program, which is administrated out of Orange's Community Action Program Agency team, which is located in Derby. So at any rate, we do help people who are older as well as our citizens who have disabilities and can't get to team in Derby with all of that information. And we have an emergency, the town of Orange itself, through Community Services Fundraising, has established an emergency fuel assistance program. So if you heat your home by either fuel, oil or propane, and you have gone through all of your state allotments, we will, if you are income eligible, we will rent a one-time per heating season minimum fill-up, and the town will pick that up.
I did talk to Dennis. You have to spend that.
No, you don't have to spend that. You're thinking of something else.
Right, but that's what I'm glad that Carol said that, because you guys have a great resource in Carol and this group, and every town, has similar resources, so please use them, ask those questions. We are always available, by email or by phone or by mail, so certainly come to us, but, these are great resources that you guys have, and you are correct about that one program, but as Carol said, there's several programs, and sometimes people, even I do it, sometimes you get them confused, you take one part of one program, one part of the other, you think it's just one program. That's to spend down is for Medicaid to be eligible for Title 19, but there's a fuel assistance program that's a separate program altogether.
Just a comment. I realize many of us are in a situation where we don't meet those income levels, and we're in a situation where we're not going to get state aid. No matter what we do, they look at you don't need state aid because your income levels are high, but we're paying very high prices for various different fuels. Unfortunately, oil, which to my knowledge is probably the most common fuel in Orange, I know I have oil heat. It's an unregulated utility. There's various different oil companies, and sometimes it's incumbent upon us to search out what the better deals are. I know I've been with one oil company for the longest time, and my daughter said to me, "Well, what are you paying?" And I told her, I think the last time it was a fill was a 309, and she said, "Well, I locked in my price at 234 last summer." So very often, maybe we can put together a list of local oil companies and possibly do a search, or maybe we can look at purchases on a large basis. A lot of towns sometimes come together to purchase oil for their school districts or something like that. This may be something we possibly could look at legislatively to develop a group of buyers that maybe you can buy into and purchase a large amount at a lower price that wouldn't require any income levels. It would be something you'd actually buy into. So I think what we have to do is try and create unique ways of finding how we can save. And these are things that we can work together on the legislative end. As far as cable competition goes, we did pass some legislation that we hope at some time in the future, very near future, will open up some competition. There is a question as to how it will affect all of us, but it is possible in the future, and you may have heard about it. AT&T is moving into Connecticut to provide television service, and may act as a stimulus in forcing our local cable provider, now Cablevision, to lower prices to meet competition. So we are working in that respect, and we did pass that legislatively. Yes?
Gasoline is outrageous. Now you go to Massachusetts, surrounding states, it's always lower. Why doesn't Connecticut lower the tax? We have one of the highest taxes on gasoline in the whole country. That's something the state can do. And not only for the elderly, they need it less than the working people who have to get to work.
This actually is something that's been discussed. It is very often a political issue, and I'll let Themis come here and give her take on this issue. There you go.
The thing with the gas taxes, I remember I first got elected in 1998, and in the legislative session of 1999, I remember it was the big issue, and it was with Republicans and Democrats in the House about lowering the gas tax. The problem with lowering the gas tax is it's a double-edged sword. You see the lowering of the gas tax like on day one, and then day 3, all of a sudden it went back up again, because the gas tax seems like it's just one tax, but it's not. There's so many taxes on your gas. There's federal taxes, and then there's our state taxes, and so it's a little difficult to discern which tax is which, and a lot of times they'll just end up raising the prices when the gas tax is lowered. So I remember in 1999, I think we lowered the gas tax, and I don't remember the exact number, but it was probably like 30-something cents at some point, and then it went back up. Because the price is going to go up. There's so many factors involved in what your bottom line per gallon price is, whether it's state taxes, federal taxes, the companies raising the prices. And so every year, as Paul said, it ends up being, a political discussion, and I think people agree, we all want our taxes lowered, no matter what the taxes are. So we try our best. We were talking this morning at the Orange Chamber of Commerce about, there's a tax on businesses that are $250. You have to pay $250 tax just to, when you're in business. That we want to get rid of that. We really all believe that we want, whether it's businesses, seniors, kids, schools, healthcare, fuel assistance, whatever it is. We just want to help you live a better life. That's our goal, whatever it is, whether that's paying less money, having more things available. And the gas tax is just, it seems like it's a simple solution, but it ends up being a very, complicated debate, both politically and with the fuel companies and businesses in the area.
Just to follow up a little bit on that, one of the issues that we are trying to tackle is something that's called zone pricing. The oil companies charge different prices to the retailers in different parts of the state. And that is passed on to the various different customers. For example, if you go down to Lower Fairfield County, and many of the representatives and senators down there said, we've got to eliminate this zone pricing because we get the highest charges for our gasoline. So we are looking at that as a possible remedy. On the other side of the coin, these revenues that we do get, at least the state part of the tax, is something that helps us fund many programs that we run in the state. You mentioned Massachusetts, and I just read recently that Massachusetts has a very large budget deficit that they're working on. Connecticut, on the other hand, we don't have a budget deficit. So we can afford to still fund many of the programs we are doing, whereas Massachusetts is looking at the problem, they're going to have to cut a lot of the services. It's a balancing act that we're working on, and we don't like high taxes. Very often politicians get accused, you're taxing us to death. Well, we are citizens too, and we pay exactly the same taxes as everybody else does. So I certainly don't want to raise taxes, and I don't want to see high taxes, and I don't want to see high prices. They're issues, they're challenging issues, and we're doing our best to work on them in the balancing act. Another question. Yes?
Electric. Why do southern states have cheaper rates than our small state of Connecticut?
We'll let the senator deal with this one, and we all have a little bit to offer here, I think.
That is a question that we get asked probably everywhere we go, and the first answer is it would probably take us about 3 months to have that conversation in full. So I'm going to try to, we'll try to sort of hit the highlights, and you'll hopefully bear with me. Our electricity rates, question, why is it cheaper in the South than it is here? Starting with the first thing, we are in the North, and in the South, they have a different climate than we have, so we're obviously using more energy. And the second part of that is we don't have the resources for our electricity. We bring electricity in. We bring it in from Canada. We bring it in from other places in order to, for transmission, for the actual electricity. We bring in oil. We bring in gas to fuel our power plants for generation. We don't have enough electricity. We are an importer of electricity. We are not an exporter. If you are an exporter, just like anything else, you have a lower price. We use more than we make by a lot. So by definition, we start off, we have to bring things in, which is, one of the reasons we have the awful transmission upgrades that we have going on right outside the window that has destroyed many of our backyards here in Orange. Part of the problem is we need to bring electricity in. Why is the cost so high? In our state, in our country, we are dependent on oil. Back to the same question. Oil is over $100 a barrel right now. It is astronomical. I can remember when it hit $60 a barrel, and it was the top of the news constantly. Can anybody actually believe it's up over 60? It's now up over $100. And we are going to continue. We've got a problem with the cost of electricity and with oil in our state, in our country. Our federal government needs to address energy independence so that we are relying on more diverse bases for having our energy, on renewables, on clean energy. We need to be going forward in that direction. because we find ourselves very much in a situation that we were in the 1970s, where we recognize we are oil dependent and we do not have the independence to walk away from it and say, we're not going to pay those high prices. So we get stuck with the bill. So we, the other big difference between Connecticut and some other states is in 1998, the state chose at that time what they thought was a good idea was to deregulate the energy industry. And so all of those companies like UI and CLMP who were both creating power and then distributing it out were required to sell off their generating capabilities, and that there was supposed to be a competitive market then for generation. And as we all know, deregulation has been a failure. It didn't create the competition that we had hoped. And the problem we have now in terms of trying to fix this is deregulation. We sold off all those generating capabilities, except we're still paying for that. It was a 20-year process with millions and millions of dollars that the state continues to pay in what are called stranded costs. We're still paying for the fact that we had to buy the generating facilities from the companies in order to deregulate. And now they're saying they want to get back into generation, and in order for them to get back into generation, we're going to end up paying them again. So they are now, making it over twice, except the bottom line is we're all standing up here and we hear every day, plus we see our own electricity bills going through the roof, and everybody says, well, you know what, we tried to deregulate in 1998, so now we're a little scared to do anything. What should we do? If we do something now, could we make it worse instead of making it better? And I think part of what the real problem is, we've got a national problem with energy. It's not being dealt with on a national basis. It needs to be dealt with on a national basis. And then we need to be looking here in our state how we can be wiser in our energy policy going forward. So I hope that sort of answers it. And I'm sure that both Paul and Themis have other things that they want to add on the energy discussion. But it is something that is very, very important to us, an extremely high priority to try to address. But I don't want to raise any false hopes with people, because the reality is there isn't a lot for the state legislature to be able to be doing. Re-regulating, we know the utilities came in with a proposal for another 10% increase. Plus, at one point they proposed that they wanted to give their CEOs bonuses. Which, we've got people who can't make ends meet, making choices between paying your electricity bill and paying for your medication, and they're getting a bonus. There's something very wrong that needs to be fixed, but I think a lot of those fixes have to happen at the federal level. But we will continue at our level to be doing everything we possibly can to make more sense of this.
We have two big casinos here in Connecticut. What are we receiving from them? And where does that money go?
First of all, this is a question that's asked almost every legislative visit that we do about the casinos. First of all, you have to understand there is a relationship between the state of Connecticut and the casinos. The casinos basically are independent nations. They don't pay taxes to the state of Connecticut. They operate basically under their own laws. There are some federal guidelines, agreements that have been reached. So when the casinos were built, they met with the state government, they met with federal authorities. An agreement was worked out that certain amounts of revenues that the casinos received would be forwarded to the state of Connecticut. And I believe it's 10% on the slots that the state receives. Approximately, I think somewhere in the neighborhood of $400 million last year. Now, when we say the term $400 million, they say, well, that's pretty good. What are we using that money for? And please remember, this is money that's being forwarded to the state of Connecticut just based on an agreement between the casinos, the Indian nations, and the state of Connecticut. That money is directed in certain areas, specifically the communities around the casinos that are required to provide some of the services, municipal services, receive some of the funding. All of the municipalities in the state receive some of that casino money for various programs that are designated programs. But on the whole, that $400 million goes to various different parts of our state budget. Now, $400 million, our state budget was approximately $16 billion. So, yes, the $400 million is a lot of money. The casinos are certainly generating large amounts of funds. $400 million in a $16 billion budget doesn't seem as much as you would think it would be, though. On the bright side here, the casinos have generated a tremendous amount of economy for the state of Connecticut. They have brought in much tourism. That part of the state had totally relied on industry, and the industries have died, and the casinos have come up and replaced them. I don't think there's a place in the United States where you can't go to now and people say, oh, that Connecticut, that's where the casinos are. I've got to get there someday. I heard it's beautiful in that area. The eastern part of Connecticut is really, really benefited by the presence of those casinos, and the state has benefited to some degree also. Fortunately or unfortunately, it's not quite as financially at the level that most people would have hoped it could be.
Just to add a little bit to that, it's every time we speak at any group, somebody always asks about the casino money, where it goes, how much is it, and what do we use it for? Because it's a completely legitimate question. This morning we were at the Orange Chamber. I had to stop. I had to do like 5 things in the hour we had in between. I stopped at the supermarket. Somebody in the produce aisle asked me that question. What's with that casino money? And the interesting part of it is this. Clearly, as Paul said, it has been a huge boon to this state. The eastern part of Connecticut, I don't know if a lot of you have been there, but there's really not a lot going on there. There really wasn't. I mean, that's the truth of the matter. I mean, Connecticut's the 3rd smallest state, yet it's clearly split in half. Clearly split in half, even to the point that we deal with our colleagues in the House and the Senate, and there are people in the eastern part of Connecticut that have never been on a Metro-North train, that have never been to New York City, that have never been, don't understand the traffic congestion we have in New Haven and Fairfield County, don't understand any of it. And you would think that such a small state, we would all have similar issues, but that's what makes it a little more difficult, because there are such diverse issues in this state for being such a small state. So the casino has brought a lot to it. The problem with the casino money, well, there's 2 issues, I think. Number one, when Governor Weicker negotiated this, it's called a compact, which is basically a contract between the casino and the state of Connecticut. When he did it, actually, it was a big deal. It was a huge deal, and the amount of money that we get from them was a huge deal. Now, having said that, all these years have passed, and, it's this much money compared to how much money they actually bring in. But you didn't know that at the time, and it's like when you negotiate anything, you really just negotiate with the information you have in front of you. So, in my opinion, we need to open that up, and it's very difficult to open up that compact, as they call it. I think we all agree that it should be opened up. It's just almost impossible to open it up, but we keep trying. But secondly, it's brought so much to the state that, with the economy and people coming in, especially to that part of the state, we're in different parts of the country, and people talk about the casinos in Connecticut, which is so interesting to me, because I've been there maybe a handful of times, mostly for work things, and it's great, and you don't realize it's in your backyard, but that money goes to the general fund, which is kind of the big pool of money, instead of saying, okay, there's this one group of money for education, or this one group of money for roads, or one group of money for healthcare. So it does go into the big pot of money, and we pull out of it for certain things. That's why a lot of people ask, I thought that money was supposed to go to education, money from the casinos. Well, a lot of it does, but you don't actually see, 1 million goes here, 1 million goes there, because it goes into the big pot of money that we call the general fund.
Hi, I was wondering if you could explain a little bit the home care option for the elderly and whether there are any income limits. Because there was a very interesting article in yesterday's paper which discusses options for remaining in your home. This is a program that started in, it started in Boston. It was called the Beacon Hill Village. And it's a movement that's spreading like wildfire. which is basically a concierge service. But are there income limits for the options, home care options, and whether there might be some demonstration programs around the state for programs like this?
Well, I'm going to answer you from, my information. I think Gayle has probably a little bit more information on that issue. I don't believe there are income limits on there, but what it allows you to do is open up your own savings account, okay, and put money in that account that you can use for the different services that you need. And that's kind of what we talked about before, giving you more independence, giving you more choices, instead of just looking at the state and saying, okay, what do you have for me? You have that money in that account, and then you can use it to plan and save for the cost of the services that you might need. The specifics for this,
Yeah.
you can, any of our offices you can call, and we'll get you every detail you need on it, because I'm admitting I don't know every detail of it off the top of my head.
It does seem pretty unrealistic, however, listening to the discussions where people are having, who are probably not income eligible, but nevertheless middle class and having a hard time. I mean, it doesn't seem terribly realistic, to be perfectly honest.
Well, it's an option. That's the point of it. It's another option, so you can pick which. I mean, we talked this morning, and it's just really in every part of our lives. Each one of us here has different needs. Each one of us has different resources, has different needs at different ages, at different times in our lives. And so the more options we have to see which one we fit into, the better off we are in the end. Please call any one of our offices, and we will give you every specific on it, because I don't know, but that's the gist of the program. It's an option to give you to open up an account so you can pay for those costs and plan.
Is it tax-free?
The interest.
The interest is.
The interest is income tax free.
The interest on the account.
On the account is income tax free.
The article I think you are talking about, and I had read it, it's more to make you aware of services that you can get.
Exactly.
It's a couple who themselves are, I believe, in their 80s.
Yeah.
And they live in Hampton, but their network to give the people in the area, mostly Hampton at this point,
Right.
the names of people that can, say, drive them to the grocery
It's a
store.
resource.
Pardon?
It's a resource, really.
That's what it is.
It's really a resource, and they have, I'm aware of the program. There was a group of us who visited it in Hamden, and it basically is a concierge service where you pay either $50 a month or $75 a month if you're 50 if you're single, 75 if you're a couple, and this gives you access to lists of services. You need a shelf put up, or you need somebody to change a light bulb. You can't go up on the ladder anymore. You need somebody to come in, and you don't want to go or cannot get out to go to the beauty parlor or go to the barber. So this is basically, you're paying for a list, really, of services. And they also have a social worker who's affiliated with St. Raphael's, and you have access to her services on a Friday. So I mean, it basically it's called At Home in Hamden, and it's a resource, and it's something that is not income dependent.
And please remember, as we said before, Carol certainly informed you guys that she has information on a lot of these issues you need, but whether it's your senior centers or our offices or any questions you have about possibly, if you had one of those questions, say, if you call us, we could find that out for you. Now, it's probably more efficient for you to say it with the Hamden example. They have all that right there from the area services and what was available, but you have many resources, and sometimes it's not easy to figure out what those resources are. And I understand that that's the issue, but going to people like Carol, going to our office, we can at least put you in the right direction or find out that information for you.
One of the things that I would like to say is that is one piece of the continuum of care that we need for not only our existing older population, but baby boomers as they start moving along. That is getting the information out about not only the services that we have, but developing skill banks, for want of a better word. And the community services in Orange, we are interested in working with the group to do just that. And our office could be the conduit of coming up with that person who can change your light bulbs. Or, you know, help, even if it means helping you take down your winter curtains and put up your summer shears. Believe it or not, Handyman Incorporated charges $400 for 4 hours of doing just those kinds of things. All right? So somebody has made a business opportunity. What I would like to say, that what I see as a social worker are not only these issues among our older population, but more and more younger families in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s are coming into my office with 2 people working and saying, with full medical coverage, and saying, I can't afford the co-pays. And those are working people. I can't afford my utilities. So we're seeing as a staff people more and more across the entire age spectrum. And as far as services to the elderly, a lot of our programming is income eligible. And while those of us who can afford need to pay more, there's also an accessibility problem because we have so many, we are service rich in this state, believe it or not. I mean, we pay a price to live in this state, but we have a state with a lot of social resources as well as natural beauty. I think the quality of life in this state is very, very high. But we have a disjointed system that's hard to access because there are so many programs. As a social worker, I want to see legislation that lifts all ships. And by that I mean, one of the things that is not offered in our state, where it's offered in 27 other states, is state tax, not taxing deferred income, such as your income from your 401ks, your pensions, your 403bs. Other states don't impose a state tax on that. I would like to see that happen. And I believe if you reduce that tax, you might not have to have all these other programs. That might be a possibility because you're really lifting all ships. Also, since we have 169 different municipalities, each with their own tax laws and so forth, including more and more senior tax freezes. What about a statewide homesteading, where if you live in your home X amount of years, your taxes are frozen or reduced or don't go up at the same rate as somebody who maybe only lived in their home 5 years?
Okay, Carol, thank you for, there was a lot there and a lot of very good suggestions on that. And, property tax and property tax relief, especially for our seniors, is something that we've continued to try to work on and focus. And I know Paul and I don't think that was whether we've had this conversation or not, but have talked about a homestead exemption and trying to work within the tax system that we have to make sense for our seniors so that people can stay in the homes, where you've lived, where you've raised your children, and where you want to stay, and not be run out of your houses as a result of high property taxes. That's something that we continue to work on, which needs to get addressed. We're hopeful that we will have some good, strong legislation coming forward that will help people stay in their homes and address property taxes. Because as you said very rightly so, while I think there was a period of time where we tend to think about this as very much a seniors issue, it really is an everybody issue. it's something everyone is struggling with in terms of maintaining the quality of life and the standard of living that we have so enjoyed in our state. And we are very much struggling with this. And as the economy turns, we're facing a potential recession. It's only going to get a little bit more difficult for people instead of a little bit easier. So those are things actually that we are talking about. In terms of the disjointed services, you're 100% right. We had a hearing up at the legislature, I think 10 days ago, talking exactly about that, about the disjointed services, and that, it's very hard to figure out which income level you're at, for which age you're at, for which program you need, for which disability you might have, for which town you might live in, and to be able to navigate through all of that in order to try to figure out, okay, so now there's 4 programs you can go to. All right, this one's closed, that one's underfunded, this is the right one for you, but you live in the wrong town. And we are talking about, for the very first time in our state, bringing all of that care under one program, a universal program that it is whatever your particular need, this is how you get in the door. You need one card to get in the door, and you don't have to go through all of that. And aside from that, providing better services to people in our state, it will also reduce the administrative costs of it, and we would become a more efficient, effective government, and we use our tax dollars in a better way. So
I believe that our programs can be collapsed if you can come up with a comprehensive social programming that lifts all ships. I also, oh my gosh, I forgot what I was going to say.
it happens to us all the time, don't worry. But you know what though, Carol, you're right on time. You're right on time, because that's exactly what we're talking about doing, is that universal system that will work for everybody. Okay, I jogged your memory. Look at that.
You alluded to earlier this morning a volunteer program whereby seniors can volunteer and maybe get something off their property taxes. Can you talk about that idea a little more? That sounds like something that the first President Bush started talking about in his 1,000 Points of Light. Can you speak a little bit more about
Yeah, this is a program, for those of you who don't know, that some other states have picked up, where if you are a senior citizen and you make a commitment to volunteer in the schools or in the community, the time that is spent volunteering, you would get a tax credit or a credit against your local property tax. And is a way to help you deal with that. And as we know, I just look around the room, I know we've got incredibly talented seniors who have a lot to offer, would be very useful in our school system and a lot of other places in our community. And I see one of the things that we're missing in our society today, one of the reasons we have so many problems, is that we are separated. Our children are here, our working parents are here, and our seniors are here. And we are, my parents always say, it's the kids that keep them young. And the reality is that our seniors have so much to offer our children in terms of wisdom. And, there are things my parents can get my kids to do that I can't get them to do. And there's great value to that. And that's a value we lose in our society today. So if we are able to use, to have a program like that where our seniors are coming in and getting some compensation for that, as a tax credit against your property taxes, it helps our seniors, but the actual value you're getting is like the MasterCard commercial, it costs $50, this costs $50, that costs $45, but the value is priceless. And so to have you participating in our community in that way is really priceless, which also the other piece of that was when you're talking about coming up as being, this community center being the center for having lists of skilled people, tap into your young adults. I have teenage boys who are very good at changing light bulbs.
We have a youth job there.
And what a wonderful way to match up, some teenagers and some young adults who may be looking, need a little bit of spending money, who are more than capable and very willing to
or, gift cards to the grocery store and have a variety, that might be a very worthwhile program. And one more thing, and I promise not to say anything.
Did you pay your dues this month, Carol?
Connecticut is very resource rich. We have beautiful land, we have mountains, we have water, we have world-class healthcare facilities, we have some of the best cultural opportunities in the whole United States. We have fine minds. I say let's put our minds together and have a state where people from all over the country, indeed the world, will say, look at how much those people love each other.
Okay, we still have some additional hands. I'm going to hand the microphone over to Themis and Paul. I have to be on the road, so I apologize for that. If people have additional questions for me, please feel free to call me. You've got my numbers on the page in front of you. You can always call me at home, 878-6412. I'm delighted to hear from you. Thank you all very much for having me here, and I leave you in the very capable hands of Themis and Paul for the remainder of the questions. And they'll fill me. We work very well together. They'll fill me in on the additional questions. So if there's things that we need to be working on together, we can do so.
I just wanted to make one comment about the seniors volunteer tax exemption. When we talk about giving people options, there are so many seniors that do volunteer work to begin with. And as Gayle said, not only do you benefit because you enjoy doing it, the group you're volunteering for benefits. Everybody involved with that group benefits. And Massachusetts did it, actually. And I think when we submitted the bill, it was, there certainly has to be an income limit on there. I think it was $650 at the time we put it in. But that's an exemption on your income tax. Every little bit counts. And that tells you guys, listen, we appreciate what you're doing. And maybe you should do more of it, because it'll help you and it'll still help the people that you're doing it for. As you can tell, the common thing with me is, with whatever group I'm in, is all about options and giving people as many choices as possible. Because the more choices you have, the better fit you're going to have with whatever you're doing.
Kind of impressive, the great ideas that we come up with in discussions like this. One of the things that I noted when I first ran for office, and I tried to listen very carefully to conversations about what I would call responsible legislation. It's important to keep in mind that every piece of legislation that we offer has some sort of ramifications, whether they're fiscal, whether they affect a person's life. And we have to make sure that we're targeting the right audience, people who need the legislation, and it's good legislation. I bring that up because last year, when many people in Orange brought the problem to me about the tax issues, property tax, I commissioned our Office of Legislative Research to do studies of what other states are doing to assist seniors in this issue. And there are programs all over the country, all different states having all different types of programs. Up in Hartford, we seem to be very good at doing what we call permissive legislation. We permit a town to institute these programs and are not willing to pay for it. So, for example, if we have a senior tax deferral and we say, well, the town of Orange, they can offer their seniors of certain levels of income a tax deferral on their property, whether it's a homestead or whatever, you have to look at the broad picture. What does that do to the revenues that the town of Orange is receiving? It shifts the burden from senior citizens to the rest of the citizens who are saying, wait a second, I know your taxes as a senior aren't going up, but mine are going to want to go up now 12 or 15%. So, while it sounds great and say we really should do it, we have to consider every aspect of what we do. I believe that we need to work from Hartford. I don't think we should be doing permissive legislation. If we do this, we need to provide the funding to do it. We can't put it on the taxpayers of the town any longer. So The one promise I will make to you, and I don't like to make promises I can't keep, the one promise I will make to you is I will work on these issues, and I will work in a responsible manner so that we don't burden everyone with the problems of a few. We try and spread it out so that we are all working toward that goal of helping each other. I guess we could take a couple more questions before we...
Lady shows them Themis's enactment whereby the insurance company pays.
Bill, was that I got a phone call from somebody about that, and clearly on the surface it made a lot of sense. Now we had to put a limit on the amount. Doesn't mean anybody who has any experience in this area knows. I mean, you can pay thousands of dollars for a wig, obviously, but just keep in mind this one thing. I felt very strongly about that, and I badgered all my colleagues until, most of them supported it and some of them didn't, but I badgered most of them until they voted for it, as I usually do. But when you talk about healthcare and we talk about all these healthcare issues and the cost of healthcare, a lot of what the insurance companies are saying is that the prices go up because of all the mandates. And a mandate is when the state or the federal government says you have to cover wigs, or you have to cover, scarring, or you have to cover this, that, the other thing. So I appreciate, thank you very much for that compliment. It was very nice. And I know so many people, that have gone through that terrible, terrible experience of chemotherapy and losing their hair have benefited from it. So, everything's a balancing act. You have to decide, okay, well, this is the downside, this is the upside. And clearly for me, that the upside was much greater than the downside. But just please keep in mind that everything we do with the mandates for insurance companies, that adds to the cost. So we have to really, every time somebody says this should be covered or that should be covered, we really have to take it under consideration, even though they're all valid. Every time, I don't think there's any, and I think Paul will agree with me, anytime anybody has ever said, insurance companies should cover X, Y, Z, I don't think anybody ever says, why would they want to cover that? They're all that. We all have different health issues. We all have different things we've experienced or know other people who have experienced. But, it is a balancing act. I like I said, I came out on that side with that issue, and it's one of those things you go to sleep at night and you say to yourself, this whole job is worth it, because you can see the people it helps. But it's a difficult decision when these things come up, because you have to balance your conscience with cost. And even though we don't like to think of it that way, that's why you pay your taxes. That's why we sit here and we decide, fuel's too high, oil's too high, healthcare's too high. They're difficult decisions to make, and please understand that we take them all very seriously. We make none of them lightly.
Is anything being done about electricity charges in the state? I don't know, I came in late, I don't know whether that's going to be.
I know I think we spent most of the past hour and 15 minutes discussing that. I actually have to run in a minute. One of us, we keep peeling off one at a time here. Poor Paul. No, he's the lucky one. He gets to stay with you guys. I actually have to be in Hartford. We did discuss that. We discussed the fuel assistance programs. We discussed the fact that Carol has a lot of information on programs that you can avail yourself of, and clearly calling our offices anytime with any issues you have to discuss any of that stuff. Do you have a specific a question in regard to that? Because we could sit here all day and discuss energy costs. Did you have a specific question?
No, I just wondered about, whether the state legislature is taking some action regarding in that area.
Well, last year we voted on an energy bill. It was a rather large energy bill, and it continued Connecticut's leadership in the country as far as conservation. We really believe that this is a big problem, clearly. It's a national problem. It's an international problem. It's certainly not something that's exclusive to this state. But a lot of conservation things that we've developed and we believe in have put us in the forefront, which makes me very proud of what we've done with it. But it's a problem. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that, after this session or after next session, the problem's going to be gone. We're oil dependent. We're fuel dependent. And we have to do something to figure that out. And I think, You know, as we talked about this morning at the Chamber of Commerce breakfast, and we spoke earlier today, it is a federal problem that they have to move forward and help with your costs. You know, I have to run, but I also want to give everybody my phone number if you don't have it. My home number is 735-5911. And probably the easiest way to get me is my office. I'll give you the toll-free number up there, which is 1-800-842. Oh, it is 1423. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Everybody's writing. That means I'm going to get a lot of calls. Please feel free to call anytime, and anything we can do to help you and work with Carol on any of the issues that you're involved with, we'll be more than happy to do.
I'd like to finish things up. Is there any more, one more question maybe? No? We're all set? Yes. Legislation, and we'll continue to work on it. I'd like to sum up and first of all, thank everyone for coming. I know my colleagues very much appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and learn from you. People keep on asking me the question that seems very obvious. Well, how do you guys figure out what kind of laws to pass? And the legislation basically begins with our constituents, with the people like yourselves, coming to us with suggestions. We give out our phone numbers so that we can get that information, so that we can assist you. And it's important for all of you and all of our viewers on Ogat to keep that in mind. If you have an idea, if you have a problem, get a hold of one of your legislators. When it comes to representation, for those of you who don't know, we have 2 districts in Orange. Representative Klarides and myself actually split the town almost in half. If you are a voter at Mary L. Tracy, she is your state representative. If you are a voter at High Plains, I am your state representative. And that's probably the easiest way to distinguish it.